My name is Maya Ellison. I was 32 years old when my own mother locked me inside a hotel storage closet while I was in labor, all because my sister's wedding was 40 minutes from starting. The next thing I remember is waking up under bright hospital lights. My whole body felt like lead. Something ached sharply across my stomach every time I breathed, and a monitor beside me beeped in a slow, steady rhythm. My mother, Diane, stood at the foot of the bed. My father, Walter, hovered behind her. My sister, Sophie, was still half-dressed in her wedding gown, a gray sweater thrown over her shoulders like an afterthought. Nobody asked if I was okay. Diane leaned in close. "Before you say anything," she whispered, "I need you to understand. I was trying to stop a panic. Please don't call the police." I couldn't even process her words. All I could remember was cold tile against my cheek and blood soaking into my dress. Then, the only question that mattered clawed its way out of me. Where is my baby? Silence. Nobody answered. That silence scared me more than the pain, more than the monitors, more than anything my mother could say. Then the door swung open. My husband, Ethan, walked in, shirt wrinkled, eyes rimmed red, wearing an expression I had never once seen in 8 years of marriage. He looked straight past me, straight at my mother. What he said next shattered every excuse she'd been rehearsing and silenced my entire family. But I still didn't know how he'd found out the truth, or whether the hours I'd lost had cost my daughter her life. Before I tell you how I ended up in that hospital bed, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you believe family should never be an excuse for putting a child in danger, drop a like right now. Because that day, I had to decide if keeping the peace was worth risking my baby's life. To understand how my mother thought she could ask me for silence, we need to rewind to 40 minutes before the ceremony inside Ashford Manor. I was 38 weeks and 2 days pregnant. My doctor had been clear, stay near a hospital, and if I felt regular contractions, bleeding, or my water broke, get help immediately. I'd told my mother and Sophie this more than once. They'd heard me, they just assumed the wedding would matter more. Ashford Manor was a grand old building, polished floors, tall windows, and a maze of hidden service hallways behind elegant doors. The ceremony room was already dressed in white flowers and gold chairs. Guests filled the lobby while I spent the morning handling every last-minute task my sister refused to touch herself. That morning, Ethan pulled me aside, worry written across his face. "You're doing too much," he said. "I promised Sophie," I told him. "You promised me you'd leave if something felt wrong, too." "I will." He studied me like he wanted to argue, but he already knew what happened when he pushed back against my mother. Still, before he left for the ceremony room, he gripped my hand gently. "One message," he said, "that's all it takes. I'll come running." I had no idea how soon I'd need him, or how impossible reaching him would become. I nodded and gave him my best reassuring smile, the one I'd perfected over years of pretending I could handle more than I should. Sophie stepped out from behind the dressing screen minutes later, her gown fitted perfectly, her hair pinned into place. She frowned the second she saw me leaning against a table. "You're not going to disappear on me, are you?" she asked. "Mom says pregnancy makes people unpredictable." She wasn't asking if I was okay. She was asking if my body was about to inconvenience her. "If something happens, I'll tell you. Just get through the ceremony." Diane, overhearing, didn't correct her. She only glanced at her schedule. 40 minutes, she announced. "Everyone stay focused." That's when the first contraction hit, a tightening band under my ribs that stole my breath completely. I gripped the table until it passed. Then warmth ran down my leg. I looked down. My dress was soaked. When I touched my thigh, my fingers came away streaked with blood. My doctor's warning rang in my head. Regular contractions, fluid, bleeding, go immediately. I reached for my phone. Diane grabbed my wrist. "What are you doing?"
I need Ethan. Another contraction doubled me over before I could argue further. When it passed, my hands were shaking. I need a hospital, I told her. Sophie's face went pale. Right now? The ceremony starts in 40 minutes. I stared at her. For 1 second, she looked ashamed. Then she looked at our mother instead. Diane's expression shifted into that calm, controlled mask she always wore when the world refused to follow her plans. "We are not dragging an ambulance through a lobby full of guests," she said. "I didn't ask for an ambulance. I'm calling Ethan. If he comes running back here, everyone will know something's wrong. Something is wrong. Lower your voice." And even in pain, even terrified, I obeyed her. That's how deep the habit ran. "There's a quiet room down the service hall," Diane said, guiding me by the shoulder. "Sit there while I call Ethan. We'll get you out the side entrance quietly." I should have refused. I should have called Ethan myself before taking one more step. But my mother had managed every crisis in my life. Some broken part of me still believed she wouldn't put me in real danger. So I let her lead me away. The hallway was cool and quiet, wedding music buzzing faintly through the walls. Halfway down, another contraction dropped me to my knees. Diane didn't look at me. She looked at the ballroom doors. "We're losing time," she muttered. "I'm having a baby, Mom. This isn't happening to you." "I know that," she snapped, impatient, not concerned. At the end of the hall, she swiped her staff badge against a door. It clicked open, revealing a storage room stacked with linens, floral stands, and gift boxes. No windows, no phone. "This is a closet," I said. "It's private. Sit for 1 minute while I call Ethan. We'll get you out the side entrance, quietly." The lock released. Simone threw the door open and found me crumpled on the floor, unconscious. Ethan saw the blood first and froze for 1 terrible second before dropping beside me. Simone was already on the phone with emergency services, calling out that I was full-term, unresponsive, and bleeding. Paramedics rushed in through the very side entrance my mother had wanted to use to avoid a scene. Only now there was no hiding it. Staff blocked the hallway. Guests peered around corners, whispering. The wedding could no longer be shielded from what had happened just a few rooms away. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, Simone stopped Ethan with one question. Was she in there on her own? "No," he said. "She was trying to call me." Simone looked at the locked door, the access logs on her tablet, and the blood on the floor, then made her own report to the police before the ambulance even pulled away. I don't remember the ride to the hospital. Everything after came from Ethan and the doctors. My blood pressure was crashing. The baby's heart rate was dropping. The diagnosis was placental abruption, the placenta tearing away from the uterine wall, cutting off oxygen while I kept bleeding. There was no time to wait. They rushed me into an emergency C-section while another team worked to stop the hemorrhage. Ethan arrived just as the doors closed in front of him. He told me later those doors were the first thing in his life he ever wanted to tear down with his bare hands. Our daughter was born while I was still unconscious. She was rushed to the NICU for monitoring. I remained in surgery for hours while doctors fought to control the bleeding. That's where this story began. Me waking up, my mother begging me not to call the police, and no one answering when I asked where my baby was. Ethan came to my side. "Grace is alive," he said. "She's in the NICU, but she's stable." I broke down completely, relief crashing through me so hard it hurt. For a few seconds, nothing else existed. No wedding, no locked door, no police. Just the truth that my daughter was alive. Then Ethan turned to my mother. "And Diane, it's already too late. Simone reported this before the ambulance left. The hotel has the footage, the access logs, and I still have every message you sent from Maya's phone." The room went cold. Diane tried to explain. She'd only wanted somewhere quiet for me, she said. She panicked. She never meant harm. But the evidence didn't match her story. A woman who thought I was simply resting wouldn't need to fake my texts. A woman trying to help wouldn't block my husband from finding me. Sophie stepped forward, crying, insisting she hadn't known about the locked door. But she admitted she'd known about the blood, known I wasn't well, and chosen not to check. Walter tried to play peacemaker, urging me not to argue while I was recovering. I looked at him and said the only thing that mattered. A mistake is forgetting to call. She pretended to be me. I asked the nurse to remove them from my room. It was the hardest sentence I'd ever spoken, and the first time I'd ever chosen myself over their comfort. The investigation moved fast. Camera footage, access logs, preserved messages. Every choice Diane made had a timestamp, and every timestamp told the same story. This wasn't panic. It was a decision made again and again to protect a wedding over her own daughter's life. She was eventually charged and pleaded guilty to unlawful restraint and reckless endangerment, a sentence, probation, and a no-contact order protecting me and Grace. Sophie stayed married, but admitted every wedding photo now reminded her of where I'd really been that day. Walter stood by Diane, still hoping the distance between us might someday close. I didn't rush to answer that. Missing someone doesn't mean they're safe to let back in. My body healed faster than my mind did. Locked doors still made my pulse spike. A dead phone screen could pull me straight back into that storage room. I started therapy. I let Ethan help without letting him take over. He always asked what I needed instead of deciding for me. Grace came home from the NICU stronger every day, no lasting damage from those stolen hours, though I'll never stop being grateful for that. She learned to wrap her whole hand around my finger while she slept, just like she did the very first time I touched her through the incubator. One night, months later, I sat on our couch with Grace asleep against my chest. Ethan checked the front door before heading into the kitchen. I stood instead, walked over myself, and turned the lock by hand. It clicked, the same quiet sound I'd heard in that hallway at Ashford Manor. But this time, it was my home. My phone sat within reach. My daughter was safe in my arms. And this time, the lock didn't take my choice away. It protected it.